Hey everybody, I'm Mike. This is Budget Guns and Gear Reviews, and you are watching The Right of the People, where we use the first to defend the second every Friday night at 11:30 p.m. Eastern. So uncover your keyboards, fire up your fingers, and come join the conversation. Hey everybody out there on YouTube's Facebook and Gun channels. Although Gunstreamer in the replay. But this is The Right of the People, where we use the first to defend the second. It is Friday, September 27th, 2019. And we got some stuff to talk about. Some of it we've already talked about this week. But nothing saying we can't revisit it, right? And go over it in a little bit of detail instead of doing it live. Namely, talking about the House Judiciary, was it just Judiciary or Criminal Justice Committee? Anyhow, the House Committee hearing on the assault weapons ban of 2019 and some of the absolutely cool things that happened in it. Of course, there was a lot of heinous garbage, lies, and, well, to be charitable, I would say it's misinformation, but it's outright lies and emotional heartstring tugging by the anti-rights, anti-freedom crowd. But it wasn't all bad. There were some pro-rights Congress critters there, which I applaud, and most notably, there was two panelists there that absolutely shone. But first, let me go ahead and welcome the irascible yet lovable Squibload to the show. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing all right. You know, you mean misinformation like the 357 Magnum Taurus Judge?
Yes. Yeah. Or what was that? An AR-50 or an AK-50 or something, or AK-15?
It was an AK-15.
AK-15,
and there was a 50 caliber AR-15, and I hope to get one soon.
Yeah,
and I know somebody out there's going to go, well, 50 Bay, well, 50, no, I think they meant 50 BMG.
Well, you know, technically, if you get a Safety Harbor Firearms SHTF upper available September 23rd from matter of fact, they're available now from Safety Harbor Firearms. They're not sponsors. I wish they were. If you guys are listening. Anyhow, you can get an upper and put that on your AR-15 lower. So I guess maybe you could have a 50 caliber AR-15. I guess technically. But you know damn well they had no idea that even existed.
I'd like to see you test that on one of those rubber targets that you were shooting with 44 Magnum.
Oh my goodness, a 50 would probably tear one of those things apart. Although, speaking of those targets, the Newbold targets, I was talking to them because mine are about shot up. And just before SHOT Show, they're going to send me their newest product. They are coming out with a dueling tree made from that material. So that'll be interesting.
That would be cool.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to getting my hands on that. Out here in the Chatteroony on the YouTube's side, hey, if you are over on Facebook, I'm not watching that right now, so, welcome, thank you. I appreciate you viewing over there. Come on over here to YouTube and say something in the comments so I can say hello. We got Gabe Stark. Yes, Gabe, you absolutely were first tonight. And we have Glimtech, who made it second. Thank you. Boot Sweat leads the Pearl Necklaces. Nope, he was not first. And we have Gun Loving Grandpa. Hi, Buck. How you doing? Midnight Range. Midnight Range does have a problem. Says that some people haven't donated to Bloke's Charity to help out a little girl. And if a person hasn't donated, I can't be friends with them. So here's a video to be my friend. Follow that link in the chat, folks, and help this poor girl out. I did, so I kind of feel the same way with Midnight here. Plus, for every $20 you donate, you get an entry to win a suppressor with your tax stamp paid for. Oh, and a small set of body armor. So hey, you can chuck that in a backpack or something. You use it as a backpack. Armor or whatever, trade it in for something that'll fit you if you're a big fat sloth fellow like me. But let's see, we also have Weston Probst out there, Seven Wonders, New York Outcast, And, of course, Squib pulling double duty. So, hello to everybody out there in the chat. Welcome to the show. But we do have a lot of things to talk about tonight. Not necessarily just that farcical bit of theater in the House this week, although that is definitely something to talk about. No, Vandaliska says we can't be friends because I'm poor, uncool. Well, no, not that's. Hey, man, if someone can give a buck, that's a buck, and that's good in my book. You know, it just we need to get this help this family out with these horrific medical bills that they're facing. I've been in those shoes. You know, when when my daughter passed, there was a GoFundMe put up, and I was absolutely amazed and heartwarmed by the support that people were giving. And really, I can tell you this, that as someone who was the beneficiary of something like this, you know, not necessarily benefit, I hate to say it, but as someone who was helped out by complete strangers during a time of great need, you know, when my wife fell sick and my daughter was killed at the same time, you know, it was pretty tough times in the budget household. And I was off work for quite a while dealing with all these issues. And I was helped out by a lot of people that I didn't even know. And it was a tremendous boost to my morale in a very dark time to know that even if someone just gave me $5, that they were out there to support, that they were out there and they cared, that they were out there giving a helping hand. And, you know, beyond the money, I think that's the most important thing that something like this does. So, you know, please go over there to Bloke's Charity for the GoFundMe for that poor girl. And, you know, Bloke's done a video on this. If you haven't watched it, you probably should. It's definitely something that pulls on your heartstrings, especially if you've ever been in a situation like that. But yeah, it's much more of a much more of a morale boost than a financial boost. Really, it was to me anyway. Not that the money doesn't help, because when I went through it, it allowed me to take the time that I needed to grieve, and it allowed me to take the time that I needed to be with my wife and help her through the process. It allowed me to pay medical bills and funeral expenses and all that. So, you know, the money was an absolute blessing, but even more important was knowing that I had the support. Anyhow, a couple more people hopped on. Let's see. We got Jeff Hopton. Hi, Jeff. How you doing? Fellow Ohioan there. Jeff is very active in the Second Amendment community here in Ohio, so I'm glad to see you out there in the audience. Yeah, Jeff, I saw that. He asked, did you see where DeWine thinks he will get his omnibus gun bill through the House and Senate? I suspect that it's not going to be as easy as old DeRhino thinks. Yeah, no, not a bit. But we have other news tonight. Let's see. Let me get to those of you who've been following the Second Amendment for a while, Second Amendment news and community. I know we've talked about this here before with the incredible regulatory overreach by the Donald Trump administration's Justice Department, more specifically the ATF, in their reinterpretation of their rulings on bump stocks, wherein they, in effect, rewrote federal law by redefining and reinterpreting the definition of a machine gun. I've been screaming long and loud when this happened about how that is absolutely in excess of their constitutional authority, because only Congress has the ability to rewrite law. Well, apparently the ATF agrees with me, because there is, of course, legal action going on in this case. From the Firearm blog, on, let's see, what day was this? Firearm Blog, 5 days ago. ATF admits no legal authority for Bumpstock ruling. Show of hands, who's been paying attention to the various lawsuits dealing with the ATF's reinterpretation of bump stocks? Because to be completely honest, I haven't been paying as much attention as I clearly should have been. In their most recent court filing, the ATF has admitted some truly explosive news. Namely, they concede that they do not have the authority to reinterpret the definition of machine guns in the bump stock ruling under the National Firearms Act. ATF admits no legal authority for bump stock ruling. Let's back up and provide some context. So, on December 26, 2018, the ATF issued a final ruling on bump stocks. A bump stock is a device that allows an operator of a firearm to simulate automatic fire by muscle power. While previously the ATF had decided that bump fire or slide fire stocks were legal devices, they then reclassified them as illegal machine guns. All current owners were ordered to destroy them. If you did not do so, you faced up to 10 years in federal prison. Naturally, a lot of people became somewhat ticked off that the ATF would seemingly arbitrarily change their ruling to make thousands of Americans potential felons overnight. As a result, many people filed lawsuits. One such lawsuit was filed by the New Civil Liberties Alliance on behalf of plaintiff W. Clark Aposhian. The lawsuit rests on a fairly straightforward presumption. The complaint states that since all legislative powers lie with Congress, the ATF, as a part of the executive branch, cannot reinterpret statutes to mean something else. Since the law regarding machine guns has not changed, bump stocks can't be reclassified as machine guns. There are another 30-odd pages of the original complaint, but that's about the gist of things. Mr. Aposhian is a law-abiding citizen. The ATF told him that bump stocks were legal, so he bought one. The filing states that the ATF lacks the authority to reclassify bump stocks, and thus the ATF has violated Mr. Aposhian's constitutional rights, as well as exceeding its constitutional remit as part of the executive branch. The million-dollar question: why do we care? Because as of September 18th, the ATF has written a court brief that admits it exceeded its constitutional remit as part of the executive branch. The court filing states specifically that the statutory scheme does not, however, appear to provide the Attorney General the authority to engage in gap-filling interpretations of what qualifies as a machine gun. Congress has provided a detailed definition of the term machine gun. The New Civil Liberties Alliance, on behalf of Mr. Aposhian, quickly filed for a preliminary injunction. Essentially, as Mr. Aposhian has suffered irreparable harm from the deprivation of his lawfully acquired bump stock, and the ATF, in the opinion of the plaintiffs, clearly lacks the authority to cause such deprivation, the final rule on bump stocks should be struck down. ATF's brief on the bump stock ruling is behind a login wall at the Pacer system. It can be found in the 10th Circuit Court's filings, case number 19-4036, Aposhian v. Barr et al. The case, this is from Yahoo Finance and Globe Newswire, September 18th, this part of the article, says the case is not about whether gun control is a good idea. Rather, Mr. Aposhian's appeal raises key issues about how an agency may create such a ban. That is, whether agency regulations may contradict the statute passed by Congress. The appeal also challenges the notion that a mere interpretive rule can bind third parties, such as owners of bump stocks. The bump stock rule made it a new federal crime to own a bump stock, even when purchased with ATF's prior permission. ATF knows it didn't have the authority to enact such a law. Instead of defending the rule, ATF now pretends the ban is just a recommendation for the public. NCLA is confident the court will see through ATF's games and strike down this invalid rule. Caleb Kruckenberg, Litigation Counsel. ATF is caught between a rock and a hard place. The agency lacks legal authority to issue a so-called legislative rule, but a mere interpretive rule is not legally allowed to bind any third parties outside the government. By ordering 500,000 bump stock owners to surrender their devices or face prosecution, ATF has acted in a completely unconstitutional fashion. It is high time for the federal courts to put a stop to this regulatory nonsense. Mark Chenoweth, Executive Director and General Counsel. Congress could have passed bipartisan legislation making bump stocks illegal. Instead, ATF has tried to ban them via administrative action in the bump stock final rule. This court has a constitutional obligation to strike down ATF's attempted legislative rewrite. Otherwise, the executive branch will usurp Congress's legislative function in other areas, and the Constitution's careful limits on how laws are made will be undone. I cannot argue with that logic whatsoever. It would seem to me that it's pretty ironclad. What do you think, Squib?
If I can find the mute button.
That would help, brother.
So I had to do some research to kind of understand this a little bit better, because this is a part of government class that I don't remember. So I guess the executive branch has all these alphabet soup agencies that I always thought were created, for the public good. But apparently the real reason they're created, or at least the way the editorial went, was to more or less legislate without any ability for anybody to vote the people making the laws out of office. When Congress passes a law and we don't like it, we can always vote them out of office. I mean, it's not always successful, but then sometimes it is. Well, if you're appointed by the executive branch and you don't have the constitutional authority to rewrite a law, but you do it anyhow, and nobody stops you, nobody in the government, the Supreme Court, the executive branch, the legislative branch don't stop you, and nobody holds Congress to doing their job, whether we like the law they pass or not, then that's a form of corruption, and they're really not there to help us. And after watching the editorial and whatnot, I'm like, yeah, okay, this makes sense, because I mean, my understanding was that what they did was illegal, but I didn't kind of understand, I guess, that perspective of it. It's not just ATF; it's all kinds of different agencies. And don't get me wrong, I understand that some of them do some underhanded things or whatnot, but I didn't understand the whole. They're appointed by the president, by the executive branch, and they write laws even though they don't have the authority, and we need to get Congress to get off their butt and do their job.
Yeah.
So it's not just bump stocks, it's other things too, but I don't know if and when, how we're ever going to get that to change.
Well, I think that this case not necessarily this specific lawsuit, although that is I think that the legal framework that they're approaching their argument with is probably the best bet we're going to have. In that I think it gets really to the heart of the matter, in that the bureaucracy, the federal agency of the executive branch, usurped the legislative branch's power. They, in effect, rewrote the law by reinterpreting the definition of what a machine gun is. And if they can do it with bump stocks, they can do it with anything. They can do it with any semi-automatic firearm. They could do it with a revolver. They could do it with anything. And it's my hope that this case, along with the others, like the FPC lawsuit and the other lawsuits that are going on with this, that at some point SCOTUS is going to have to step in and rule on the bump stock issue. So it'll be interesting to see if they ever decide to take this, how it progresses for the courts. I think that if they do decide to take this, I don't think they have any case but to overturn this ban. But I'm not a lawyer. I am not a legal expert. I'm not a constitutional scholar. As I've said many times, I'm just a loudmouth with a camera and a microphone. So, we'll see.
Do you think that no Congress person challenged the ATF on this, challenged the executive branch and said, hey, oh, whoa, this is our job, because most of them are anti-gun? I mean, do you think they were like, we would have done this anyhow, so...
I think they were just happy that they didn't have to come down on the issue one way or the other, given the high emotions at the time. I think they were like, phew, I don't have to deal with it. Let's kick that can down the road. Let the ATF take the heat because I don't want to take it and risk my chances of re-election if I have to come down on this one way or the other. They all decided to be Sergeant Schultz, and I know nothing. That's what I believe. I don't know. Out there in the chat, what do you guys think? Do you think that the Congress critters deliberately ignored this so that they had plausible deniability and didn't have to deal with this, or what? Do you think? Do you guys think that this might have some chance of being overturned on this, based on the logic in this argument? Jay Mattingly, which, by the way, welcome to the show. Jay Mattingly says if the ATF admitted they couldn't do it, then that law should be reversed immediately, correct? Unfortunately, that's not how it works. It will have to be overturned in court. So really, the ATF admitting this is nothing more than it's nothing more than a little bit of ammunition to use in the pro-rights, pro-freedom cause, but not necessarily the death blow to the Bumpstock ban.
I think people forget easily why we have a system of checks and balances. It's so the government doesn't get too big. It's so the government isn't corrupt. Unfortunately, we've seen the government get big and corrupt. So, anything we can do to encourage the system of checks and balances to work as intended, we should do. We should, let people know or let our, like you said, our elected critters know or whatever.
Yeah. Weston Probst says it wasn't a law, was it? Just a reclassification, clarification of a regulation. Correct, but it has the force of law. And that's the problem.
Right.
That's right. The problem. It's these unaccountable, appointed bureaucrats making rule changes that carry the force of law, because it's not like you could just say, well, it's just a rule, I don't care, Congress didn't pass it, what are they going to do? Well, what they'll do is they'll put you in federal prison for up to 10 years and make you pay hundreds of thousands of dollars in fines. That's what they'll do, just because they decided they wanted to change a rule. For instance, if they decide to reclassify pistol braces as NFA items, and thus any AR pistol with a brace is now an unregistered short-barreled rifle, I'm a felon at least twice over.
Well, no, they'd have to do an amnesty period.
No, they wouldn't. They didn't have to do. They didn't do an amnesty over reclassifying.
If they want to,
Bumpstocks.
You said NFA. NFA, you would register. You'd get a tax stamp and register it.
That's a good point.
Yeah, when they did the NFA, they had an amnesty period for people to register their guns after the fact. So, yeah, if they legislate it out of you being able to legally own it, that's one thing. If they legislate it or bureaucrat it into an NFA item, they would have to give you an amnesty period, but they would get so flooded with requests for tax stamps, they'd hang themselves. You reading the chat?
Oh, it would help if I had turned the mute button off on my mic. Yeah, right?
Okay, I just thought you were really intently reading.
Yeah, no. What was the last thing you heard me say? Did you hear me say what the Glimtech was talking about?
No, I didn't hear that.
Okay, now to repeat myself. See, amateur hour. I got to get used to my new technology here. Glimtech says it was a way for Trump and Congress to use a scapegoat to say they did something to appease the left-wing commies. When it goes to court, they have no choice but to overturn and nullify it. I hope that's the case. Jeff Hopton says that the ATF used Chevron deference to change the definition on a machine gun in regards to bump stocks. What that is it's case law that says that a regulatory agency can make reinterpretations of laws and change rules basically at will. I don't see how that's constitutional, but that the Chevron thing has stood up. I think this is a stretch of it for sure, but again, not a lawyer, so we'll see. Midnight Range says they decided bump stocks were machine guns, but never gave an option to get a stamp for them, did they? Just to destroy or turn in. That is because of the Hughes Amendment, which, if they were classified as machine guns, that would have made them illegal under the Hughes Amendment because they were manufactured post-1986. Now, if you had a bump stock that was manufactured pre-1986, I'm sure you probably could have registered it. But, yeah. Yep, Squib pointed that out in the chat. Yeah, that's why.
I can't type as fast as you talk. I was typing it, and I got the word use, and then you started talking, and I'm like, man, these fat fingers.
Yep. No, I just have a big fat mouth. That's what that is. Budget likes to talk. But that's that. So we'll see how the bump stock thing turns out. Hopefully it goes well for us. Next up, though, is something an hour and 40 minutes or so of the House assault weapons ban hearing. And it was pretty interesting stuff. It was the usual infuriating lies, misinformation. Well, no, lies, and more lies, and attempts to pull on the heartstrings of the electorate by the anti-rights, anti-freedom crowd. They put forth. They stacked the panel of people who were giving testimony with a lot of anti-gun, anti-rights, anti-freedom folks. But in that mix of vile, reprehensible slander, there were a couple gems, outright gems of truth. We did have some Congress critters there who were pro-rights. But we also had a couple of people on the panels. There were two ladies, Dianna Muller and Amy Swear. Dianna is a three-gun competitor and also the founder of the DC Project, to which I will be dropping a link in the chat here in a moment. The DC Project is an organization that takes women from all 50 states and takes them to D.C. to meet their legislators and put a name and a face and real people to the Second Amendment. She had some very interesting things to say to the Congress critters there and rebutted a lot of the myths and outright lies propagated by the anti-rights crowd, the statist and I think fascist crowd that was there. So let's go ahead and take a look at this article. This is from The Truth About Guns. Video, ex-cop Dianna Muller tells Congress I will not comply with an assault weapons ban. You may know Dianna Muller as a prominent professional shooter. She's sponsored by companies like Benelli and won the 2015 NRA World Shooting Championship ladies title. So it's safe to say that she has more firearms knowledge than all the members of the House Judiciary Committee before whom she testified this afternoon, combined. Muller was also a 22-year Tulsa Police Department officer. As a law-abiding gun owner, she let Jerry Nadler's committee, or Nadler, or whatever his name is, know that if another assault weapons ban becomes the law of the land, she chooses not to participate. As she told the committee today, please don't legislate the 150 million people just like me into being criminals. It has happened. You've already done it, Muller said, referring to the Trump administration's ban on bump stocks, the devices that use the semi-automatic weapon's recoil to make it rapidly fire like an automatic. I was a bump stock owner, and I had to make a decision. Do I become a felon, or do I comply? Should the government pass an assault weapons ban, Muller declared, I will not comply. Let's take a look at what this wonderful lady had to say. Let me go ahead. Okay, that doesn't want to come up.
Gentleman from Arizona.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Fewer than 1 in 50 of all prisoners in self-defense, especially in
Stop listening to
with
this
his
guy,
AR-15, saving his own life. Houston, Texas, 2017. A homeowner survived a drive-by shooting by
he
defending
has
himself with his
he
AR-15.
went on to list a bunch of
Broken
times
Arrow,
the AR-15s
Oklahoma,
were used in
2017.
self-defense.
A homeowner's son, New York, home intruder, 2004. Did you see any impact anecdotally? Armed intruder. Rochester, New York, home intruders fled after facing an AR-15. Ms. Muller, you served as a law enforcement officer during the time that the previous assault weapon ban was in place from 94 to 2004. Did you see any impact anecdotally on your safety as a law enforcement officer or on those you were sworn to protect and serve?
Dang it, got me. I have previously testified that I did not see any before, during, or after, and I'm listening to these numbers, and I would like to follow up on the 70% less likely to occur during assault weapons ban. I don't understand that, and I don't understand why we would have allowed it to sunset if it were an effective policy.
Yeah, well, it was contested, and as I reported, the CDC did its own study and didn't come up with the same conclusions. So, is there anything else that you heard today you'd like to respond to?
Oh, there's a lot.
Well, press on then.
I have 26 seconds.
Yep.
Okay. I would like to, Congressman Richmond's already gone, but the 5.7, the FN 5.7, a little bit of education there. It shoots flatter. As a woman, it's less recoil. I love this little gun. It's not a 57, it's a 5.7, and it shoots flatter so I can be more accurate at longer distances. And with the minimal recoil, and it holds 30 rounds for a pistol, that's good. It's got kind of a weird grip, but that allows me to protect myself better. This is probably, and it does have knockdown power, yes. But my goal here is to educate people. We are law-abiding, responsible gun owners, and please don't legislate the 150 million people just like me into being criminals. Like, it has happened. You've already done it. The legislation on bump stocks. I was a bump stock owner, and I had to make a decision. Do I become a felon, or do I comply? And like that gentleman that just got escorted out, I will not comply with the assault weapons ban.
Thank you.
Gentleman's time has expired.
That right there was just pure awesome. You know, and she said she had a whole lot more to say. Let me see if I have anything else from her. No, I didn't bookmark anything else from her. But she?
It was informative. It was well said. It was informative. It was to the point, and she did it. She did it with courage.
Yes.
She spoke for all of us. How often does somebody actually get up there and speak for all of us? You see the person on 6 o'clock news that they interview that you're just face palming. They're going, "Oh my goodness, this guy does not speak for us." She was speaking for us, and I thought that was great.
Yeah, I think that honestly, I think her testimony throughout the day was nothing short of magnificent. Her and Amy Swearer were the two absolute bright spots on that dark, nasty despicable grease spot on our legislative history there. Let me go ahead and share with you guys her the website, dcproject.info. Again, there is the link to that out in the chat. 50 women from 50 states, nonpartisan and educational initiative for gun rights. We are hashtag doing something. Join our movement. Goals of the DC Project: education, give legislators an opportunity to speak with a gun rights supporter and have a contact for information or education on firearms-related topics. Preservation, encourage the preservation of America's gun culture from conservation and commerce to competitive sports, hunting, and self-defense. Representation, highlight the diversity of gun owners and the rising female demographic. More women own guns than ever before. Gun rights are women's rights. So I highly encourage you guys to check this out. If you can afford to donate some money and support this project, I would very highly encourage you to do so. I am in contact, communicating with Dianna, trying to work it out to get her to come on the show and talk about this. So stay tuned for that. I would love, well, to have her tell us what it's all about. But Dianna wasn't the only bright spot on this, because Amy Swearer from the Heritage Foundation was another one sent to see. So yeah, let's go ahead and check out what she had to say. This is from BearingArms.com. Heritage Foundation's Amy Swearer destroys assault weapon ban argument. This is from September 26, 2019 by Tom Knighton. With testimony taking place before Congress, there's a lot of stuff that's going to be said. I'd be very surprised if half of the lawmakers on the committee even hear half of what's being said. A lot clearly aren't paying attention, as you'll see in a moment. However, as noted earlier today, many witnesses are there to try and elicit emotions, not to talk facts. That's because they want to throw people off rationality. Oh, they want people to throw off rationality. It works, unfortunately. It works because people are emotional creatures. That's why anti-gunners like to bring speakers who can talk from emotion, because it does sometimes sway people. However, Amy Swearer of the Heritage Foundation was one who came in armed with facts. However, that wasn't all she brought to the table during her prepared remarks. Nope, not at all. No, she was able to bring a bit of emotion herself. Let's see. Amy Swearer delivering basic facts about how Americans use firearms to the House Judiciary in their hearing on assault weapons is the dopamine hit I didn't know I needed. But I wasn't expecting the story about her mom. If hashtag 2A Twitter doesn't know who Amy is yet, they should today. From Lindsay Field. Wow, I wasn't familiar with Swearer's work before now, and actually neither was I. But I'm definitely going to be following her going forward. She just laid down a powerful defense of the Second Amendment and assault weapons in both fact and emotion. The anecdote about her mother not being very good with a handgun but being able to use an AR-15 accurately shouldn't really surprise us. There are a lot of reasons why that would be the case. The longer distance between the front and back sights, for example, helps with accuracy. The stance one takes with a rifle is a bit more stable as well. Plus, there's less chance of flinching with a rifle than a handgun. And there's tons of stuff I'm probably not even thinking about. Regardless, that right there is the argument. That is why people have AR-15s. Right now, a lot of lawmakers, like Representative Lucy McBath, who, we will note, seem to not be paying particular attention to Swearer's remarks, don't think you or I should have AR-15s. They think they should be reserved for military and law enforcement use, even though the military doesn't actually use AR-15s. Yet Swearer illustrates why they're needed. She gives them the answer to the question, why does anyone need an AR-15? They need them because, for some, it's the best way for them to be able to defend their life. It's just that simple, and that part of Swearer's testimony is what folks like us need to counter when someone asks that question. So, oh, they don't include video in this article. Well, let me find some video because I know it's out there. And Squib, if you want to discuss, I will find what I need to find here.
On the subject of the air quotes assault weapon, assault rifle, the semi-automatic civilian variants of military infantry rifles and carbines. Here's the thing. For civilians, if it's used properly, if it's employed properly in a self-defense scenario, the mere presence of that weapon could be the difference between having to fire a shot or not. There are people that when they see that weapon are scared. And I understand that the people out there that don't understand them at all see them and they're scared, but the bad guys see them and they're scared too.
Yep.
Just having that weapon could be the difference between you and five guys trying to take your car during a riot situation. And if you had to employ that weapon and you know how to use it, or you know how to use any of the weapon systems you have, and we understand as gun people, different systems, different ammunition work better for different scenarios. We understand what, fighting a threat with lethal force is. We understand what a force multiplier is. We understand what an equalizer is. We understand, whereas other people just throw those terms around, they really don't know and they don't understand. It's hard to get these people who say, well, pass the bill and then we'll figure out what it means, to understand those terms and understand what it represents to us, the law-abiding citizens, the people that elected them, when they're surrounded by security.
Well, this is the Heritage Foundation's YouTube channel's clip of the C-SPAN coverage of the hearing. So let's hear what Ms. Swearer had to say.
And I am the Senior Legal Policy Analyst at the Heritage Foundation's Ed Meese Center for Legal and Judicial Studies. Just as doctors can only recommend an effective treatment plan if they first form a correct diagnosis based on accurate assessment of the symptoms, policy analysts and policy makers must have an accurate understanding of the societal problems they are seeking to combat. Unfortunately, too many policymakers appear completely uninformed about basic factual realities related to guns and gun violence. Don't misunderstand me. We all want safer communities, but the characteristics distinguishing so-called assault weapons from non-assault weapons are not factors like caliber, lethality, or rate of fire. Proposals to ban scary-looking features like barrel shrouds or pistol grips are, for all intents and purposes, proposals to force law-abiding citizens to own guns that are harder for them to handle, harder to fire accurately, and more likely to cause them injuries, even when they are being used for lawful purposes. Moreover, semi-automatic rifles are not a meaningful driving factor behind rates of gun violence. 2/3 of gun deaths in this country are suicides, where the type of firearm is essentially irrelevant. With respect to gun crimes, over 90% are committed with handguns. Rifles of any kind are definitively used in only 3 to 4% of gun homicides every year, and an American citizen is 4 times as likely to be stabbed to death than they are to be shot to death with a rifle of any kind. Despite frequent claims that semi-automatic rifles are the weapon of choice for mass public shooters, in the last decade, over half of these shootings have been carried out with handguns alone. On the other hand, semi-automatic rifles like the AR-15 are so well suited for defensive action against threats in a civilian context that the Department of Homeland Security quite literally designates them as personal defense weapons for law enforcement officers. It is little wonder, then, that millions of law-abiding citizens in this country also choose these types of semi-automatic rifles as their own personal defense weapons. Far from needing to be protected from these rifles, law-abiding Americans benefit when they are allowed to defend themselves with them, particularly in situations where they are outnumbered. Just last week, a homeowner in Rockdale County, Georgia, relied on his scary-looking semi-automatic assault weapon to defend himself against 3 masked teens armed with at least 1 handgun who tried to rob him and other residents in their own front yard. Ironically, the rifle deemed an assault weapon by many in this room was used defensively to protect innocent people against assault, while the perpetrators used a non-assault weapon offensively to commit actual assault. Importantly, some of the most famous examples of the defensive use of assault weapons by civilians come from scenarios where the government has been either unable or unwilling to defend entire communities from large-scale civil unrest. During the 1992 LA riots, for example, law enforcement was nowhere to be found as hundreds of looters ransacked Koreatown. Ordinary store owners like Richard Ree and his employees took it upon themselves to defend their livelihoods from lawlessness, using, in many cases, semi-automatic rifles. Similar stories emerged during the civil unrest in Ferguson, Missouri in 2014. There are some here today who still genuinely don't understand why or how anyone would need such scary-looking rifles for purposes other than mass murder. And so I have permission from my mother to explain it to you by partially embarrassing her. My mother did not grow up with firearms, and they will never be her favorite thing in the world. In fact, she'd never handled a firearm until I took her to the range for the first time several years ago. Now, I love my mother, but like every other novice with a handgun, she was quite bad. I mean, she struggled to hit a stationary target from 6 yards out under ideal conditions. And then she picked up an AR-15. And I watched my mother put a fist-sized grouping of lead in the center mass of a target from 20 yards out. That is why law-abiding citizens buy millions of these firearms. When accuracy and stopping power matter, they are simply better. Americans use firearms to defend themselves between 500,000 and 2 million times every year. But God forbid that my mother is ever faced with a scenario where she has to stop a threat to her life. But if she is, I hope politicians protected by professional armed security didn't strip her of the right to use the firearm she can handle most competently. Frankly, I hope she has in her hands the scariest looking assault weapon she can find, so that we can both be confident in her ability to end the threat. Thank you.
That was absolutely great, what she did to call them out on their hypocrisy. But unfortunately, it fell completely on deaf ears because you know full well that A, none of them have the decency to feel ashamed, and B, they don't care if her mother has the ability to defend herself or not. As a matter of fact, they would prefer that she not. But I think that both of those ladies were absolutely wonderful during their testimony all throughout the day, rebutting and refuting the lies spouted by the anti-rights, anti-freedom members of the panel. I thought it was just awesome, outstanding, completely great. So if anybody missed the hearing, they're really, those are the highlights. I highly recommend you go back and watch it if you've got 3.5, 4 hours to kill. Because while some parts of it are like watching paint dry, other parts of it, like that, are extremely uplifting. But the rest of it, while infuriating, is enlightening because it exposes exactly what the enemy thinks. And yeah, they are the enemy, because anyone that wishes to disarm me is my enemy, because they certainly don't have my best interest at heart. Jeff Hopton says, I wish the term assault weapon would not be used. They need educated that no semi-auto rifle is classified as an assault weapon. I hear you, but they're trying to control the narrative, and that's how they control the narrative. And they have successfully done so. If anyone has noticed, I haven't been using, much using the phrase anti-gun. I've been using the phrase anti-right, anti-freedom, because that's what they are. It's, I was listening to Armed American Radio the other day, and he brought it up that there was somebody at the GRPC that brought it up, that we need to reclaim the narrative and stop using the phrase pro-gun. We need to use the phrase pro-rights, pro-freedom. Because if we're pro-rights and pro-freedom and they're against us, they must be anti-rights and anti-freedom, aren't they? So let's take that bit of the narrative back. And Vandalistica quite rightly points out that it doesn't serve them to be accurate. Nope. Why let the truth get in the way of your narrative? Let nothing get in the way of advancing your political narrative, and that's what they do. They're masters at it. They have been for quite some time. What do you think, Squib? Were the ladies a shining beacon of hope, or was it just, a great token resistance, but absolutely pointless?
They spoke the truth, and they also spoke from experience, real experience, not third-party experience, that some of these politicians were saying, where they've heard it or they've read a report or a study or whatever. To give you the example about what she's talking about, her mother, all right? One of the things that I learned when I learned rifle marksmanship, and really my first real training with a firearm, safety and everything, was on the M16A2 platform. Now, I realize it's a full-size rifle with a fixed stock, but that AR M16 M4 platform, we know, is modular. You can change the barrel length. You can put an adjustable stock on it. You can put different grips on it, different sights on it, you can change it out and customize it to whatever you want. Under the right circumstances, or even in a stock model, it is designed for anybody of any stature and pretty much any strength. It is a target rifle in the sense that most of the time in the military, you're using it in peacetime to qualify on the range. That doesn't mean you can't take it into combat. You can. It will work in combat. It will work for a defensive purpose that a law-abiding citizen would use it for, that a rancher would use it for, that law enforcement would use it for, security, that sort of thing. But this platform can be adapted or adjusted to different missions. It'll fit pretty much any body style, and it is very accurate if you learn how to use it properly. When I was at Bass Pro Shop one time, there was a gentleman there with his wife, and he was trying to talk her into letting him buy an AR-15. She wanted to get it before the ban, and he wanted to get it before the ban, and he was having trouble trying to sell it to her, and the sales guy was not doing so well, and I sort of jumped in there. Maybe I shouldn't have. I was that guy that day. But she was a frail old lady, and she looked scared looking at this scary black rifle. And I let her know that in the military, we learn how to use these things, and it's a great training platform for beginners. It's lightweight. It doesn't have a whole lot of recoil. It's adjustable. It can put down a threat. You can use it to put down accurate fire. It's really easy to control, even for somebody, an elderly woman that she wasn't 100 pounds. And I like the fact that she brought up this story about her mother, because it's an absolute truth. And those of us in the firearms community, in the freedom community, whatever you want to call us, right? We know these sorts of things because we've used these. We've trained with these. We know, and whereas Congress, they don't know, they don't care, whatever it is. Media, they don't know. What about that one who said they shot it and they had a panic attack? Whatever. That's a load of crap. You know it, and I know it. So I think it's great that they were up there and they were using not only facts and real figures, but they were also sharing personal experience that wasn't some made up third party BS or something they read out of some novel or some magazine or something.
Yep. That's what I think was tremendous about their testimony, and why I think it was just so outstanding. I don't know who got them on that panel, but that person needs patted on the back over and over and over too. Patted on the back so often it leaves a bruise, because that was masterful to have them on that panel.
Mia said it all. Heavy as 10 boxes. Yeah. These people coming up with this that she never picked up a rifle. She had heavy as 10 boxes.
Yeah, she's a damn liar. Let's see. Archangel Azrael. Good day, Australia here. Trust me, gun buybacks don't do anything. They just rip off the taxpayers. There are more rifles in Australia than before the buyback. Well, that's interesting. Wise Guys R Us TM says, great stream tonight, gentlemen. Thank you very much. I do try. Slowly but surely, I'm getting away from amateur hour. Just little bit by little bit. Incrementally. Baby steps. Next up, those of you who saw my video of the speech I gave in Columbus on, was it September? Yeah, it was September 7th, on the 7th of this month, 20 days ago. Know my position on red flag laws. They're unconstitutional. They violate the 1st, 2nd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and 14th amendments. They just trample all over it. Well, here's some proof that they absolutely violate the First Amendment. The example I gave of them violating the First Amendment in my speech was the former Marine in California. No, not California, I'm sorry. Oregon, who said that if Antifa started killing us, he would kill them. And he got red flagged. Well, there is a gentleman in Florida who is now in that same company. This is a piece from the gun writer. Oh, come on, I didn't want to go on that. There we go. It's a piece from the gun writer from September 25th. From red flag laws to anti-gun thought police, I've never seen it this bad. This is by Lee Williams. As someone who's very outspoken about guns, the Second Amendment, and our God-given rights, I'm hearing one question from readers again and again. Have you seen it this bad? Folks, I've never seen it this bad, and I don't know when or if it's going to stop. We're not talking about the mere banning of a firearm accessory, which is pretty egregious on its own. What is happening now involves the very real and very unconstitutional loss of our rights. We are sliding down the proverbial slippery slope. The degradation of our rights began with red flag laws, which are also known as extreme risk protection orders, or ERPOs for short. ERPOs allow someone to petition a court to order the removal of a third party's firearms from their home without the need for probable cause or the commission of an actual crime. Police can use force to enforce an ERPO, including deadly force. Yes, just ask that poor fellow from Maryland. And it is a crime for the gun owner to refuse to turn over their weapons. Maryland's ERPO law has already led to the death of one man, a 61-year-old homeowner shot dead by police after he refused to surrender his firearms. There have been several legal challenges to red flag laws, most often for violating the Second Amendment, although the practice clearly raises 4th, 6th, and 14th Amendment issues as well. Former Broward County, Florida Sheriff Scott Israel created the Threat Assessment Unit in the months following the horrific mass shooting in Parkland, which ultimately cost him his job. Although I guess now there is some commission or investigation that recommended he get his job back. So we'll see how that goes. But I digress. Israel told the media in December 2018 that the unit would be headed by a former New York Police Department inspector and would evaluate threats made against schools. Now, it seems the unit has branched out and is investigating problems that occur far removed from any school property. Evidently, as long as the alleged perpetrator is a gun owner, they're fair game. The First Amendment be damned. According to AmmoLand, Broward County resident Peter Van Antwerpen posted a meme on a Facebook group expressing his displeasure that some members of his community wanted to get rid of Florida's powerful preemption law, which only allows the legislature to regulate firearms. The meme showed former NRA President Charlton Heston hoisting a musket over his head and included the words, "From my cold, dead hands." Enough said, let them come, Antwerpen wrote on the meme. He also included the names of several people who opposed the preemption statute, adding, "I hope you are the ones to come confiscate my weapons." Now, remember, I've seen people say stuff like that in my chat, particularly about Beta O'Cuck. Beta O'Rourke, for those of you who are new to the show. So keep this in mind. I hope you're the ones that come confiscate my weapons. AmmoLand pointed out in their story that Antwerpen is a strong constitutionalist and Second Amendment supporter. One of the people he named in his post, the wife of a city commissioner, interpreted the post as a threat, called the Broward County Sheriff's Office, and demanded that they investigate Antwerpen. They did. According to AmmoLand, 4 members of the newly formed threat... there we go. I know you got to pimp your website, dude, but come on, that was kind of annoying. Anyhow, 4 members from the newly formed threat assessment unit showed up banging on Van Antwerpen's door. The deputies entered the house with full tactical gear. The police did not have any warrants. Van Antwerpen, in a bath towel, greeted the members of the unit. The investigators started to question Van Antwerpen about the post. He is a major supporter of law enforcement, so he chose to answer their questions. Van Antwerpen explained the meme and asked the lead investigator if the meme broke any laws. He admitted that it did not. The investigator concluded that Van Antwerpen wasn't a danger to anyone. He gave Van Antwerpen the report number. My question is this. If the lead investigator already knew the post did not violate any law, why go over to Van Antwerpen's home en masse wearing scary ninja attire? In fact, why bother the poor man at all? I guess anything goes as long as it's only a gun owner whose rights get trampled. In my humble opinion, there's no way red flag laws will withstand the serious constitutional challenge. They're far too broad, and they clearly contravene the 2nd, 4th, 6th, and 14th Amendments. That said, it could take years before a red flag case makes it before the Supreme Court. For gun owners, this will be a dangerous time. Piss off the wrong person, such as an ex-spouse, and you better get ready for the flashbang crashing through a window. As to Antwerpen's sudden loss of First Amendment rights, the current anything goes, better to breach the door to be on the safe side for the children mentality of local law enforcement will end too. Lawsuits will see to that. Until this changes, gun owners will remain squarely in the crosshairs of local law enforcement. In the meantime, I'm going boating this weekend with all of my firearms. I certainly hope there won't be a tragic accident to report. Stay safe, Lee. So there you have it, folks. You better be careful what you say, what you post, where you post it, to whom you say it, to whom you post it, who you mention. Anything to do with your free speech. You know, in any areas where these red flag laws are the law of the land. Because you had better believe someone will use it against you. Here's another piece of proof. I mean, I don't think that naming someone by name was the smartest idea in the world, honestly. But I don't think he did anything illegal either. I don't know. What do you think, Squid? Dumbass or free speech, or dumbass and free speech?
Yeah, you guys know where I stand on free speech. If you can't deal with it, I don't know what to tell you. But my thing is, what's going to happen when somebody calls in one of these red flag laws on somebody who's never owned a gun in their life? And they kick the door in, they go, all right, where are the guns, where are the guns? And they tear the house to pieces and there's no guns in the house. Is that going to make the 6 o'clock news?
Nope.
Is that going to get people that are anti-freedom to start thinking maybe I should be pro-freedom?
Nope. Because they won't report it. Let's see. Midnight says Heston should have picked a modern rifle, not a musket. That would have hit harder. Well, he was holding, if you know the story behind it, he was holding that musket up because it was just presented to him as a gift from somebody at that NRA meeting. That's why. And he said, hey, pry this for my cold dead fingers. That's where that came from.
I think that our society has gotten way too sensitive to what people say, what people wear, and things like that. All over. I understand we're litigious, and I understand, oh, well, what if they would have done something? What if that was, people are labeling everything as hate speech and so on and so forth. People have gotten so thin-skinned, and the whole thing about our pro-freedom argument is we want everybody to have the ability to defend themselves, not just from a tyrannical government, but from a home invader, from somebody who wants to mug them, from wild animals, from whatever. If you don't choose to take the necessary steps to make sure that you have the adequate protection, adequate training, adequate practice, adequate insurance, adequate skills, that's not my fault as much as it's not my fault that I exercise my First Amendment right, and you're all offended. Unfortunately, it's the way our country is going, and they're putting the two of these together, and they're going to take away your due process so they can take away your ability to defend yourself, and then they're going to take away your freedom of speech and expression. What are you going to have left?
Nothing.
And I mean, I don't want to sound like an anarchist either, because I'm not. I'm far from it. I'm the first one to go, you guys need to quit talking about we need to have a civil war. What I would like to see maybe is a constitutional convention where we maybe add some amendments to the Constitution where we reinforce things like, Congress is the one that needs to pass the law, not these bureaucrats. Or let's add this to the Second Amendment. I like Pennsylvania's shall not be questioned.
Yeah.
But I know that's a real tall order too, to have a constitutional convention. But it would put a lot of stuff to rest.
But it would be dangerous, especially now with the far left being as loony as it is. Uh-oh, people. Uh-oh. Budget's got to behave right now. Walter Thornsley out there says, great show. That's my boss, guys, so shh. Don't tell him what we said about him earlier. So, yes, Jeff Hopton says, I guess my M1 carbine is safe since it is not a black scary rifle. I guess the AR rifle could file civil rights violation for discrimination. That would be hilarious if someone did file a lawsuit, a discrimination lawsuit on behalf of their AR. That would be just funny. That would be awesome. Especially if it were like a Ruger 1022 that was decked out in all tactical, and you get, because you've seen where the anti-gunners, the anti-rights folks have said that that one should be banned. Yeah, and no, that one's okay. When you have a tactical 1022 and a wood and steel 1022 beside each other, the one's okay and the other one isn't. So yeah. Seven Wonders says a buddy of his recently exclaimed on a live chat, I will die a free man in regards to the red flag laws. Mistake? Potentially, depending upon where he is. It could be a horrendous mistake if red flag laws are in effect where he lives. Thankfully, so far, we don't have that in Ohio, although there are those, including our wonderful governor, who want to make that the law of our fair state. We have a lot of good gun rights organizations here in Ohio and a lot of grassroots people that are standing up to fight that. Jeff Hopton out there in the chat being one of them. And, we need to lend whatever support we can to these organizations that are standing up and fighting this. I've said many times that I believe in putting my money where my mouth is, and I am a member of, I think, every one of our state organizations, actually. I throw my dollars at them because they need the support. I think that is the bare minimum least I can do. Of course, as I've said, I've got my Congress critters numbers on speed dial. I call their offices regularly to let them know what I think, send emails, etc., etc. Even go to rallies and stand up and raise my voice. And I think that's what every responsible, law-abiding citizen who cares about their rights and freedoms should be doing. There's a reason I end every show with, tell your Congress critters and elected representatives what you think, send yada, 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 blah, blah, blah. You guys will hear that here in a little bit. There's a reason for it, folks. I believe it and I live it, and I think everybody should. So let's go ahead and move on to the last of the main topics I want to talk about tonight. Let's see. Which is a piece from Breitbart. NY Outcast says, budget needs a raise, man. Just saying. Yeah, I'm not going to argue with that. Let's see. Last but certainly not least, before our self-defense shout-outs, is this piece by, who is it by? Is it by AWR Hawkins? Yes, by AWR Hawkins from September 22nd in Breitbart. Obesity, fire, water claim more lives than mass shootings. 53 people were reportedly killed by mass shootings in America in August, while 40,000 were killed by obesity during the same month. The UK Sun reported the mass shooting deaths versus obesity deaths, showing the media is fixated on gun violence, reporting although other causes of death are exponentially higher. They quote HBO's Bill Maher saying, in August, 53 Americans died from mass shootings. Terrible, right? Do you know how many died from obesity? 40,000. Yet the Democrats want to ban commonly owned semi-automatic rifles, with Robert Beto O'Rourke in particular saying, hell yes, we're going to take your AR-15. The claim of 53 deaths from mass shootings appears to come from a New York Times story based on shooting tracker information. The number appears to be highly inflated, as numerous shooting tracker mass shootings involve one death. Yet the figure is insightful in that even if reported at the inflated level, it is completely eclipsed by deaths due to obesity. Moreover, numerous other causes of death outnumber those from mass shootings, even when shooting death figures are reported higher than they actually are. For example, Forbes reports that there were nearly 5,000 motorcycle deaths in America in 2017. If we divide 5,000 by 12 for the 12 months of the year, we see roughly 416 deaths by motorcycle each month versus the reported 53 deaths via mass shootings in August 2019. The National Safety Council reports that 5,051 people died from choking in 2015, which means that 8 times as many people died from choking on average each month, 420 people, than did from mass shootings in August 2019. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention reports approximately 3,536 drowning deaths in the U.S. annually, which works out to about 294 a month. FEMA reported 3,645 deaths by fire in 2017, which is roughly 304 deaths by fire a month on average. Monthly levels of death by drowning and death by fire are much higher than the reported 53 deaths in a month from mass shootings. And since they want to talk about mass shootings, death and tragedy at the wholesale level, let's, where is it? I know I've got it in here somewhere. No. You know what? Let's just, let me type it in. Let's go look at heyjackass.com and talk about Chicago. Let's see. September to date, shot and killed, 44. Shot and wounded, 198. Total shot, 242. Total homicides, 47. That's just so far in September. Year to date, let's see. 361 shot and killed, 1,747 shot and wounded. Total shot, 2,108. Total homicides in Chicago so far this year, 394. But they don't want to talk about that. Because A, this is retail, not wholesale, and it's not as sexy. And B, it shows the fruitlessness and uselessness of their gun control schemes, because Chicago is one of the most heavily gun-controlled areas in this country. Yet, look at this death rate. Of course, they'll tell you that roll call is shipping these guns over from Indiana. But I would have to ask, if Indianans have all these extra guns that they can just ship them over to Chicago, why isn't Indiana full of death like Chicago is? Wondering. Just wondering. If you don't know, if you're not familiar with this website, again, it's heyjackass.com. Check it out. It it gives you all these facts and figures, breaks everything down from Chicago. The 30-day stupidity trend. That's funny. But you see what they do. Go in there and get into the weeds and break it all down, 2019 cause of death in Chicago, 91.7% were by gunshot in one of the most heavily gun-controlled areas in this country. So, yeah, they break it all down. Check it out. Yeah. So there we have it. obesity kills far more people, than mass shootings do. I guess we need to ban the high capacity assault ladle to keep people from eating themselves to death, right? Maybe forks should only have 2 tines instead of 4 or 5. Or maybe 3. Isn't that like a shrimp fork that's got 3 tines? But
or you could have the freedom to make the choice to eat unhealthy, and I'll have the freedom to make a choice to defend my family.
That's crazy talk. People can't be trusted with freedom. We need to tell them everything.
Oh, okay. Well, we need an alphabet soup agency to legislate that.
Yes. We need like the FFA, and I'm not talking Future Farmers of America. We need the Federal Fork Administration to regulate the size and number of tines on your fork and the pointiness of it, because obviously a pointier fork is easier to skewer food with. So if we have a dull fork, then, it would be harder for you to stab into that meat or whatever you're trying to eat and get it to your mouth. As a matter of fact, I think we need to get rid of spoons altogether because they make it too easy to eat soup. And, with a fork, people will have a harder time eating, soft foods and they'll eat less of it and thus be healthier. They won't be as fat and they won't die as much. Yeah, that's it. Midnight says, keep your damn hands off my tactical spatula, you damn liberal bastards. Well, you know what? Hell yes, I'm coming for your spatula. Don't you doubt it. And your fryer, too. You see how absurd this is? The same arguments and same garbage plans that they put out for our constitutionally protected rights, our constitutionally protected items, i.e. our arms, when applied to something else, demonstrates how ludicrous and stupid these people are. But the fact is, they're not stupid. The ones that put these plans forth aren't the stupid ones. The ones that say, oh yeah, that's a good idea, we shall do that. Those are stupid. Those sheeple are the dumb ones. The people putting this stuff forth, they're very smart. And they have a reason for why they're doing it. And it's not because of crime. It's not because of safety. It's not to help anybody. And it's damn sure not for the children. As I've said time and time again, and I will say time and time again, gun control is never about the gun. It's always about the control. And you can trust that to your dying day. Anyone who wants to disarm you is not your friend. They do not have your best interests at heart at all. But that's just my humble opinion, and I am, as I've said many times, just a fat loudmouth with a camera and a microphone. And I ain't afraid to use it neither. So let's go ahead and move on to what is Roll Call 219's favorite segment of the show, the self-defense shoutouts. For those of you who are new to the show or who have never stuck around to the end, self-defense shoutouts are not where I'm reveling in the death or injury of the bad guy. Instead, self-defense shoutouts are where I'm reveling in the proposition that the good guy had the means, method, and opportunity to defend themselves against that bad guy. First up, this is from KATU2, from KATU.com. Wife shoots, kills estranged husband during argument in Washington County. By KATU staff, Monday, September 23rd, 2019. Portland, Oregon. An argument between a wife and her estranged husband ended in a fatal shooting Monday, the Washington County Sheriff's Office said. Let's see. The Sheriff's Office said a woman called 911 on Monday afternoon to report she'd shot her husband at a property in the 16800 block of Northwest Germantown Road. First responders tried to save the man, but he died from 2 gunshot wounds at the scene. Initial reports state the couple was going through a divorce and that the man was coming over to collect his things. The woman claims her estranged husband threatened her with a gun, and at some point she shot him twice. The man pulled a gun on the woman. She pulled her own gun and fired 2 shots at him, and that's where he died, said Deputy Brian Van Cleef, describing what they'd been told. No one else was home at the time. However, deputies said there were dogs at the house. They collected 2 guns as evidence. According to dispatch audio obtained by KTU News by Broadcastify.com, the woman relayed what happened to dispatchers. He came at her with a weapon. She shot him, the dispatcher told deputies. At this point, deputies said it appears she was acting in self-defense, and there is no initial indication that a crime was committed. Officials said there is no danger to the public. Investigators are withholding the couple's names and ages until family members have been notified of the death. Good for you. Who knows what could have happened if she had not had the ability to defend herself? If, say, he had, red flagged her before coming over. Next up, from 5newsonline.com. Oklahoma say a hearing impaired woman has fatally shot an intruder inside her home near the Arkansas border. LaFleur County Sheriff Rob Seal said Monday the woman was uninjured when a man broke into her home at about 5:30 p.m. Sunday in Rock Island, about 190 miles east of Oklahoma City. Seal says the woman yelled at the man to get out of the house and shot him once when he moved toward her. He says the woman did not know the man and had never seen him before. Deputies discovered the suspect's body in the kitchen area of the house. He was pronounced dead at the scene. He has not been identified, and his body was transported to the state medical examiner's office for identification. Again, here's yet another person, despite what NPR or the anti-rights crowd would have you believe, who is alive today because she had the means to defend herself. And last, but certainly not least, is this bit of video from September 25th, 2019. Now, the incident happened before this. It's dated 8/12/19, so this happened back in August. But it goes to illustrate what we mean as to why we might need an AR-15.
Fuck out of here! Here,
Love the dude in the blue shirt going in front of the muzzle there. Knucklehead. I don't know what he thought he was going to be doing. But there you go, folks. There, we have, what was it? 3 stories right there of people who, one of them with a scary, evil assault rifle, who defended their lives against someone who would have done them harm. That's what the Second Amendment's all about. It's about defending yourself, not only from the bad guys, but from the tyrants who work on Capitol Hill as well. Thank you, everybody, for coming around and being part of this show tonight. I very much appreciate it. As always, I am humbled and amazed that those of you out there in the chat would spend this time listening to me. Again, I've said it before and I'll say it again, seeing you guys out there from the start to the finish, it means so much to me. I appreciate it. And all you new guys out there, I hope you come back. I hope you enjoyed what you saw. I hope you like the show and want to be part of it in the future. Squib, do you have anything you would like to say? Anything you'd like to leave us with? Words of wisdom? Anything you'd like to plug?
Everybody out there, spend a little quality time with your scary rifle this weekend. Let it know that you love it and you're thinking of it all the time.
That's right. Always let it know that you care. Matter of fact, here. It's time to hug one of mine. Oh, I love you. Anyhow, again, I'd like to thank everybody out there in the chat. Hey, no problem, bloke. I understand you can't. You're busy with grad school and writing papers and all that, man. Ain't no problem with you not being here. Plugged your GoFundMe, your charity cause there earlier. Midnight. If you're still out there, can you go ahead and pop that link in the chat so that people can go and check that out? Black Cat says, "Get a room." Yeah, I already have. Unfortunately, man, I actually, this rifle, this KS-47, is really enough to just irritate me. I love it, but it's irritating too. You know, this is the one that the trigger pin walked out, and I was getting some binary discharges with it. Don't judge me. And so I just fixed that. No problem. I put an anti-walk trigger pin in. Great. Awesome. Yeah. Now I broke well, I don't know that I broke it, but the extractor broke, and I had to send my entire bolt carrier group to PSA for them to exchange it instead of them just sending me an extractor. So that kind of sucks, but at least they are making it right. So I've like tried to do the review on this thing 4 different times, and I just, crap keeps happening. So other than that, you know, this rifle shoots great. It's awesome. With this rifle in 7.62 x 3.9 with this Sightmark Wolfhound optic with the bullet drop compensator for 300 blackout, I was hitting 12 x 12 plates at 1,000 yards at Thunder Valley. So I'm willing to put up with some quirks for stuff like that. Anyhow, I want to thank you guys for being out here. I really appreciate it. As always, I'm going to end this by admonishing you to keep the pressure on our Congress critters and elected representatives. You know, they won't see the light unless they feel the heat. So send them snail mail, email, telephone, telegraph, smoke signal, semaphore, heliograph, carrier pigeons, runners. Do whatever you have to do to let them know what you think, and never, ever, ever give up the fight. Thanks for coming, folks. Have a good one.